Hello and welcome to your daily dose of Satoshi's news. Today's date is Monday, the 19th of May 2025, the year BSV comes alive. Branch your threads, expand your mind with treechat.ai, all your posts put on chain. Right, let's see what we've got today. Got a cracking post here from CSW about hash rate. Again, he's on fire at the moment. It's like really laying it on thick. And this is great because what he's trying to do is give all those shitcoiners notice. He's just like, look, this is how Bitcoin works. This is what makes sense. Any rational thinker would understand this. Let me try and explain it to you so that you're not doolally, but they still don't get it. But, I mean, this is awesome because it just confirms everything that we know. We're just going to talk about my little post here saying, might we be about to witness the hand of Satoshi being played? Oh, fantastic. Yeah, we'll talk about that. And in terms of talking about that, in this show, I'm going to go over the elements of commoditization because I was having a chat with somebody about this earlier today, and they didn't get the point of a commoditized network. And I was like, well, if it's common, it means no one has control of it. And if no one has control of it, nobody can delete anything on it. It's the only way to make immutable data. That's the whole point of having a common network. No one has any control of it. If you don't want to create something, and then don't put it on there. Nobody forced you to do anything. We'll go over the creation of this and how you sort of like commoditize it. Go over some of the dates here. So obviously we're just going back to the Genesis block here, block 0. We'll talk about the Tulip Trust. We'll have a look at the white paper, see what's happened to it since then. Got some 365 days of Bitcoin history, and then that will be the end of the show. Right, let's get into it.
Greg says he's Satoshi, like a cowboy in the West, riding on the blockchain that they call the very best. 1 million strong, them transactions flying free. Just wait for the Terra node, you'll surely see.
Here we go. Right, let's go through this post here from CSW. He says, the problem, no, the bloody disease, is that people still believe hash rate is the fortress wall around Bitcoin. As if rows of humming machines alone are guardians of integrity. It's an illusion fed to idiots who think speed equals strength and heat equals honesty. But this is not a game who can flip the most silicon. It never was. Bitcoin isn't protected by computation like a gun-toting mercenary at your door. It's secured by something more terrifying to the coward and far more binding to the man who dares to build economics. Hash rate is a signal, not a shield. It's the smoke, not the fire. It tells you there's something burning beneath, but it doesn't tell you what. That something is capital, real, painful, unrelenting capital. It's money laid down like bricks in the foundation of a city. It's infrastructure, data centers, power contracts, legal exposure, identity. It's miners saying, I am here, this is mine, I've built it, and if I cheat, I lose everything. That's the game, not a contest of CPUs, but a wager of skin, steel, and sanity. You don't secure a financial system by throwing computation into a void. You secure it by making fraud expensive, by ensuring that any attempt to rewrite the ledger risks the very asset you spent years accumulating. Honest miners aren't honest because they're saints, they're honest because the cost of dishonesty is ruin. This is not a church, it's a casino where the house burns down if the dealers cheat. And yet fools babble on about low hash rate as if it's a death sentence. They don't see the architecture, they don't understand that the only thing that keeps the system standing is the people who operate it have everything to lose. Anonymity can't be punished. Pseudonymity is a child mask. But when your data center has an address, when your ASICs have a power bill, when your name is on a contract and leases, then you are known, you are bound. That's what secures Bitcoin. Exposure, risk, accountability. You can't defraud a network that knows where your server lives. You can't double spend where everyone can sue you for it. This is the brilliance no one wants to see, because it means the fairy tale ends. The myth of freedom without cost dies. You want the power of a global monetary system? Then bear the burden. Prove you're a real participant, not a lurper with a miner in a closet, but a capitalist with capital at stake. In the end, Bitcoin security is not a technical metric. It's a moral architecture wrapped in economic consequences. It's not about how fast you can hash. It's about whether you'll be there tomorrow to face the bill. That's what makes the miner honest. That's what keeps the system safe. Yeah, I mean, that is just, it's phenomenal. It's phenomenal. It's probably too in-depth for most people when they're actually trying to understand Bitcoin. But if you do have a fairly deep understanding of it, like I do, like, this is brilliant, because this is actually the finer detail of the protocol that I've laid out, and it's beautifully written. Yeah, absolutely beautifully written, almost like poetry in motion. Yeah, it's awesome, because what secures it is the protocol. And the protocol is economic competition, a chain of digital signatures, unbounded scale, a fixed asset supply, and a locked protocol. That is it. That's what secures it. And CSW didn't have a choice in doing that, because that protocol was set in stone before he even invented it. It was already there. There was no choice in it. All he did was express what was already there. The concept is set in stone, and he just expressed it. Like the number one was already there since the beginning of time. You know, this was already there since the beginning of digital data started. So there was no choice in it. You know, the only choice was literally the fixed supply. How much of a fixed supply is there going to be? That was the only choice he had to make. And I mean, other little things that aren't really part of the protocol, but part of the technical aspects is the block rewards time. Yeah, the block creation every 10 minutes. And again, he said that was like an educated guess, because you want enough time for all the world's hash rate to be able to compete for it. But again, you also don't want to compromise, be it too long, because somebody just like to confirm that their transactions are within a block. But as we now know, when Terranode comes along, there is no mempool. There's no mempool. So this suggests that transactions might be confirmed instantly, which is what we really want. You know, I mean, it's going to be fabulous to actually see it come to fruition. See what the tech guys have actually built, and his true vision for what Bitcoin really is. Honestly, absolutely phenomenal. So let's get into this then. When I said, might we be about to witness the hand of Satoshi being played? Now, what do I mean by the hand of Satoshi? Well, let's go into this, the elements of commoditization, because there was a process that the network had to go through. And during this process, Craig was pretty sure that the powers that be, the Rephaim as you want to call them, because that's what they're called in the Bible, they would attempt to subvert his creation. They would attempt to deceive people away from it. Get rid of it in all they could, because they own and control the central banking system. But we'll come to that in just a minute. So let's go through the elements of commoditization, because this is the only way to secure data in order to make sure that it can't be deleted. There is no other way of doing it. So let's compare this to sort of what's in the white paper. So we've got the protocol structure. Economic competition, and there's a line in the white paper that says, without economic, or this is my interpretation, without economic competition there is only collusion and centralization. That's my explanation of it. Location of the Bitcoin white paper, it's in the abstract, and the quote here says, nodes can leave and rejoin the network at will. And in order to have a system where nodes can leave and rejoin the network at will, they can't be proof of stake, because proof of stake can't join the network at will. And they can't really leave because they already own a stake, and there's no cost in maintaining the stake. So the only way to have nodes that can leave and rejoin the network at will is to have an economically competitive system. That's it. So that's kind of like indirectly where it says it's economically competitive. Next, we have common accountability, and my interpretation of this is network users are accountable to one another rather than a central authority through a chain of digital signatures. The location in the white paper is under section 2, transactions, and the quote is, we define an electronic coin as a chain of digital signatures. So the reason the chain of digital signatures is so important is because it's the chain of digital signatures that creates a private association of users. And without having a private association of users who can identify one another in the private, if that can't be done, then responsibility and accountability for any criminal activity taking place on the network is on those who economically sustain the network, which are the miners. The miners, even though they might be economically competitive to one another, they are economically sustaining a network that, if it had criminal activity on, would be responsible for. So you have to move accountability and responsibility away from the economically competitive foundation onto the users of the network, and this is where you create a private association through a chain of digital signatures. That's why it's so important. And that's really what the coin is. It's just something that's fixed in supply with your digital signature on it. Without that digital signature attached to the transaction, you have no claim. And if you have no claim, you have no contractual credibility, there is no economic value there whatsoever. It's the signature that gives it economic value. Now, we're not talking about a market price. It's the signature that gives it economic value, that gives it authorization, that gives it contractual credibility, and therefore creates common accountability so that no one can do anything on the network that nobody else would know about. So everybody's equal. That's why we know that Satoshi Nakamoto was a single individual, because there can't be a group of people, saying, oh, yeah, we're a group of trustees with it. No, someone created that wallet address and someone sent and received from it. There has to be common accountability. And that's the way you do it, because there is a signature with a transaction. You can't say that signature belongs to multiple people. No, one person sent that. They are responsible for it. That's it. So the protocol dynamics. So my interpretation here, the statement indirectly says that there is no block size cap because the transaction fees incentivize the payment processors / miners to compete for fees. If the block size is restricted, then the block fee would also be restricted and therefore remove any incentive for economic competition. Location in the white paper, section 6 under incentives, and in the quote it says, the incentive can transition entirely to transaction fees and be completely inflation free. And obviously this is the issue that BTC has got, and this is why Peter Todd was advocating for it, going, oh, it's fine, you just add inflation, the block reward ends at 0. So miners need to get their fees from somewhere continuing. So if you have an inflationary supply, like in fiat currency, you can just simply print more and keep it going and create a massive bubble that creates inflation. Whereas when you have transaction fees, and it means it can be inflation free because the miners can economically sustain themselves from the block fee due to the volume of transactions due to utility. So that block cannot be capped, because otherwise there would be a limit on the block fee and it wouldn't be economically competitive. So that's why you have to have unbounded scale, and it's in there. So the incentive can transition entirely to transaction fees and be completely inflation free, unlike Peter Todd, who just says, well, 1% to maintain $1 trillion is fine, it's fine. Those people who don't say that are just stupid. They're just running off memes. They don't know what they're talking about, really. So if it's going to be inflated, someone can inflate it. So who's that going to be, Peter? Do you want to explain yourself? Honestly, it's just so ridiculous. Next one, fixed token supply. So in other words, the amount must be common. So this is here a common amount, so there is no central point of authority or control that can increase or inflate or decrease the asset amount / supply. Location in the white paper, section 6 incentive. And the quote is, once a predetermined number of coins have entered circulation, the incentive can transition entirely to transaction fees and be completely inflation free. So a predetermined number of coins. So in other words, it is predetermined. It was already caked into the program. Nobody had the authority to create it after the network had been started, because the amount was already predetermined, and that's it. So therefore, it is a fixed amount. And the last one, the locked protocol. This explains why the protocol economically incentivizes it to remain the same. Location in the white paper is section 6 incentives, and the quote says, he ought to find it more profitable to play by the rules, such rules that favour him with more new coins than everyone else combined, than to undermine the system and validity of his own wealth. And undermining the validity of the system and his own wealth is another way of saying like increasing the supply. Because when you increase the supply of something, you reduce the demand and reducing the value. So you're undermining it. So therefore, when he ought to find it more profitable to play by the rules, in other words, the rules are set in stone. And that means that is another way of saying that the protocol is locked. And then I've just got an image here. So here we go. Economically competitive foundation, a structured chain of digital signatures, unbounded scale, so limitations and restrictions cannot be manufactured and the network not be manipulated, and a fixed asset supply. We've got 21 million, and then all of those 4 elements are locked. And then down the bottom, we've got the timeline for commoditization. So we've got 2 months of the white paper being released to provide a common opportunity for anyone and everyone to start the network themselves. And then the next part is neutral, common, organic growth of the network, where there is no central point of influence over it for a period of 10 years. And that is what no one can replicate. Whereas anybody can build a network like this, but what they can't replicate is the neutral size and growth, which is why, again, he had to use a pseudonym and used a Japanese pseudonym, because Japan is an island nation with a large enough population and a language barrier that would probably be able to accommodate and enable his identity to remain a mystery for long enough while the network was going through this period of neutral organic growth. And that's it. So there is, once something is uploaded onto a network with these elements, like where is the central point of authority or control or failure? There is none. And this is the only way it can be done. The only way it can be done. So we'll just confirm this then about the Bitcoin white paper. Look, Satoshi Nakamoto, October 31st, 2008. And again, that was released to the cryptography mailing list. So white paper released 31st of October 2008. And then we got the Genesis block created on the 3rd of January 2009 at 6:15 in the evening UTC. So there we go. That is 31st of October to the 3rd of January. So that's 2 months and 4 days. 2 months and 4 days grace. And then embedded in the block was this, the Times, 3rd of January 2009. Chancellor on brink of second bailout for banks. And it was CSW that was explaining that at the Bitcoin conference 2017 in Arnhem. Brilliant explanation there. He said, the naughty banks, it was really good. Check this out. So here we have the Genesis wallet. In other words, the wallet that the block reward, the 50 Bitcoins were put into. And you can see now that there is 71 Bitcoin in there. You can see first input, look, 50 Bitcoin. There we go. And if we look at the actual wallet, there's all these other transactions that have gone in there. So ironically, there's now 21.5 other Bitcoin that have been sent to that address, just because people like the novelty of having said that they've sent a transaction to the Genesis block, maybe hoping that one day Satoshi Nakamoto would move it. Maybe they can find out, is he still alive, blah, blah, all that crap. Oh, there we go, look, received 50 Bitcoin, the Bitcoin block, and then 21.5 genuine Bitcoin after that. That's hilarious. I always find that funny. So next, let's look at the Tulip Trust. So we've got the paper created 31st of October, published and released 31st of October 2008. The Genesis block 3rd of January 2009. And here we have, to whom it may concern, CC Dr. Craig Wright. I acknowledge the trust and the transfer of Bitcoins to this trust. I have full control of all software and the keys used to manage Bitcoin as of this date. And that is the 9th of June 2011. It is agreed that I, David Kleiman, shall become the trustee of the transfer of the Satoshi I have received from Craig Wright, and this was 2011. No record of this transaction will be filed in the US or Australia. The transfer is valued at 100,000 USD for Australian tax purposes. I acknowledge that I, Dave Kleiman, have received 1,100,111 Bitcoin from Craig Wright. At the time of the transfer, it is valued at 100,000 USD. I will form a trust to be managed by at least 3 people, but no more than 7 at any time. All Bitcoin will be returned to Dr. Wright on the 1st of January 2020. And there we go. So it was actually 10 years and 362 days, almost to be precise. So it was the 10 years plus a little bit. The return will be in the form. The return will be in the form of a return of a control of a company to Dr. Wright. The company and the trust will be managed and held in the Seychelles. This will be designated by tulips. And again, I think tulips here was related to the tulip bubble, because CSW knew that Bitcoin had the potential to be the largest bubble in financial history, outshadowing the tulip mania, which is the world's first ever noticeable financial bubble. So smashes that out of the water, which is why I think he called it tulips. And I suspect the reason he called it tulips is because this 1.1 million Bitcoin was initially going to be used as Bitcoin's insurance policy to pop the bubble that he suspected would have been created by the deep state. And that's exactly what has happened. It's exactly what has happened. We'll go into that in just a minute. The company and the trust will be managed and held in the Seychelles. It will be designated by tulips, and the trading that was noted to have not been a bubble, but no record of the agreement will be made publicly at any time. Dr. Wright has noticed that he's facing bankruptcy and blah, 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 blah. Don't really need the rest of that, but yeah, there we go. So all Bitcoin will be returned to Dr. Wright on the 1st of January 2020. And this indicates the end of the period of neutral organic growth. So in other words, scaling can now take place. And it's a race against time. And why he set up this as sort of Bitcoin's insurance policy, one, to prove that he is Satoshi Nakamoto. And again, why would you need to prove that you're Satoshi Nakamoto if people know you're Satoshi Nakamoto and there isn't going to be an issue with it? Well, he suspected there would be an issue with it. And how do we know that? Well, if we go to the Bitcoin white paper, here it is, peer-to-peer electronic cash system, under section 4, proof of work, look at this bit. Look at this bit. So what he does, he actually tells them how to attack the network. So he said, to modify a pass block, an attacker would have to redo the proof of work of the block and all blocks after it, and then catch up and surpass the work of the honest nodes. We will show later the probability of a slower attacker catching up diminishes exponentially as the subsequent blocks are added. But he's told them how to corrupt the network and then predicted that they would. Hook, line and sinker, gotcha, which is why we needed the Tulip Trust as Bitcoin's insurance policy, the 1.1 million Bitcoin. He's going to say, look, I'm Satoshi Nakamoto. I have enough economic power in this to absolutely wipe your bullshit economically worthless creation out of the water and return the value to the original Bitcoin protocol, because 1.1 million is 5% of 21 million. So in order to literally wipe out a market, all you need is about 100% of the 24-hour trade volume, and the 24-hour trade volume of most market traders items is around 5%. So you just throw 5% of 5% and that's it. So he's told them how to corrupt it, put an insurance policy in place to stop them, and this is what they actually did. This is what they did. Look, they forked the network on the 24th of August, 2017, where they segregated the digital signatures from the transaction data. And how do we know that the signatures are really important? Well, obviously, this part here, section 2, transactions. We define an electronic coin as a chain of digital signatures. So they segregated the chain, removing all contractual credibility and therefore economic value, making the entire network economically worthless. And they can't take it back. There is nothing they can do. They also had to implement replay protection to prevent transactions flowing back onto the main chain. You can check it out. It was BTC. It was Gregcoin that had to implement replay protection because they are the alternative protocol. Whereas Bitcoin just simply carried on. Yeah, it had a change of ticker symbol due to the political shenanigans. But then they did it again. Roger Ver and co., they are the ones that had to implement replay protection to stop transactions flowing back onto the main chain. This is why Gregcoin has got legacy addresses, mainly beginning with the number 3 and the letters BC, and Bcrash has got legacy addresses beginning with P or Q. But Bitcoin is the only one that literally just uses legacy addresses beginning with the number 1. No replay protection implemented anywhere because they are the main chain. They are the main chain. So that's why the Tulip Trust was needed. Because he predicted, well, he first of all told them how to corrupt it and predicted that they would. And they have. I need to add a little bit to that, yeah. So talking about going back to the hand of Satoshi. So the Tulip Trust is the hand of Satoshi. That would have literally been used to wipe out the entire market. Like the entire market. But that would have been a terrible idea. A terrible idea. Because if he had done that single-handedly, what would have happened was that, those the mafia that have got billions of dollars tied up in BTC, they would be looking for somebody to wail on, to blame for losing them billions of dollars like in Bitcoin, and the fingers would be pointed firmly on the individual who flipped the market if they had control of that number of Bitcoins. They wouldn't be interested in why he'd done it. All they know is that he'd done it, and because they'd be raging over losing pretty much the shirt off their backs, which is what they'd done. And then after they'd taken him out, the deep state would then step in and say, you can't trust their network, the entire market flips, and what one man did or said, it's completely centralized. Let's just get back to good old central bank fiat currency. That is how the narrative would go. So that was initially going to be the hand of Satoshi, the controller of the Satoshi coins. But that would have been a bad idea. So what about this other hand of Satoshi being played? Well, this is Terranode. This is the economic model of Bitcoin being played out, where miners will be able to economically sustain their networks or their operations due to the volume of transactions coming up onto the network that Terranode will allow. This Terranode is really what Bitcoin is all about. Bitcoin that is expressed in the white paper is just simply the protocol that Craig expressed. He didn't create it. I mean, he designed how you could bring it to fruition and bring it into reality, but he didn't have any decision over that. However, Terranode is the real magic, because that is what solves the unbounded scaling problem, and that is what Satoshi should really be famous for, because the unbounded scaling problem is an issue that plagues the entire tech industry, and nobody has been able to solve it yet, but Terranode does. This is the true vision that Satoshi Nakamoto had for Bitcoin. It was the scaling of it, because he didn't invent the concept. The concept was already there. However, the scaling, this is all Satoshi Nakamoto. This is him. This is what Bitcoin is really all about, because you wouldn't have actually been able to create Bitcoin unless you'd already solved the unbounded scaling problem before you'd created it. Because otherwise you wouldn't be able to scale it for the entire world to use. So he must have had Terranode in the bag. In his mind, he must have known how to scale it unboundedly before he created it. He must have known it, because there's no way you could make a common digital network without any limitations and restrictions unless you knew how to scale it unboundedly. Like, it's just absolutely phenomenal. So when I'm saying, might we be about to witness the hand of Satoshi being played, this is Terranode. This is utility. This is the volume of transactions coming on the network. No need to use the Satoshi coins. No need to touch any of Satoshi's stash. No need to use that at all. This is purely economic, because the miners are literally like piranhas when it comes to Bitcoin. Like, Bitcoin is their food, their sustenance that maintains their operations. They will be chomping away at that, and the way they do that is by downloading the Terranode software and adding hash rate to the network. Adding hash rate is literally what chomps away. So they're literally like digital piranhas more wanting Bitcoin. Chomp, 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 chomp. That's what it's going to be like. And they are going to be economically incentivized to do that. And so when I say like a shoal of piranhas, you're eating a meat, it's also going to be like a herd of wild wildebeest, a stampede coming in. And this is why I mean, are we about to witness the hand of Satoshi being played? Fuck yeah. Oh, can't wait. Can't wait. Anyway, 30 minutes already. Hope people have enjoyed the show. It's the 19th of May, 2005. So on the 19th of May 2010, we've got discussions of the offer to buy pizza, because we're coming up to the famous Bitcoin Pizza Day. There was just one post here on the 19th of May saying, anyone know of any pizza eating hairdressers? That's all we've got in a bit of Bitcoin history for 19th of May. But there we go. We'll leave it there. Hope you enjoyed it. So as ever, if you enjoyed these updates, please ding your donations for your appreciation to either Satoshi at Sembia.com, Handcash.io, Rockwallet.me, Simply.cash, Relator.com or Senti.ch. We'll leave it there. Hope you enjoyed it. And as ever, be aware, take care, stay safe out there, and we'll see you in the next one.
2 years ago, you got SegWit, which we lied and cheated and stealed, and I was part of the lying and cheating and stealing to get SegWit, to get Lightning, which, by the way, had critical vulnerabilities and lost people's money.
The king still has one more move.